Today, for today's episode of Conservative Consciousness Raising, I wanted to talk about something briefly, a rare feat for me. Actually, we'll see how brief this is. I'm limited to my car ride here, so it has to be short. I want to talk about how conservatives are different from liberals, or that the right is different from the left, and this one key thing. On the right, we repudiate authoritarianism like fascism and Nazism and socialism and communism and even theocracies. We don't want this. Most of us don't want that. We repudiate these things. I have no problem going like to hell with Nazis and white supremacy ideology, actual white supremacy ideology, because if you don't know what real white supremacy and Nazism is like, well, let's put it this way. If you think just average American culture and Christianity is that, then you don't know what it actually is. And that's a shame, because that means it's been watered down to the point that our grandparents who actually fought Nazis, like my grandfather did, all would get lumped into being Nazis too from the liberal left. So that's pretty gross, watering down what real Nazism is. So we have no problem doing that. I have no problem condemning fascism, right? The workings of really just a different kind of socialism where you still get to own some private property and businesses still get to kind of feign as if they're running themselves but really get directed by the government. That's not good. Don't want that. Easily condemn that. Of course, condemn socialism and communism, right? The appropriation of people's property, the abolishment of private property, of private businesses, the government owning and running everything, and everybody just being enslaved to whatever the government and politicians are deciding, and really to what ends up being a dictatorship over enough timeline, though typically the dictatorship starts pretty quickly, as we've seen through the 20th century. So I have no problem condemning all those things, and I don't want a theocracy either. And I don't think most conservatives want a theocracy either. I have not seen The Handmaid's Tale, but I've just read and heard things about it, and it just comes off as the silliest thing. It's like, and I said this in another video, it's like we already know what America looks like as a Christian nation. We already know what the founders created, and imperfectly so, and we've worked towards better things like freeing slaves and equal rights for women and for like racial minorities, things like that. Like, yeah, not everything was perfect. There is no perfect, but there's better and there's worse. And certainly the system of checks and balances of our government, with a solid Bill of Rights and built on the ideas of free markets, of free trade, of being able to decide who you're going to, who you'll do business with, to who you'll work for, to what wage you're willing to work for or sell something for, all these like principles that are aspects of capitalism. These are all things that the socialists want to throw out and replace with command economies, and we've seen what happens when that happens. So, we on the right, I on the right, repudiate all of those authoritarian, big state control schemes. I have no problem repudiating that. Why doesn't the left? Liberal, if you're watching this, why don't you repudiate the communism, the Marxism that's embedded itself throughout leftist thought? I mean, I don't know what the left, what liberalism, what the Democratic Party would be if they got rid of all the machinations of Marxism entwined with policy, with the type of thinking and rhetoric, the reasoning that goes on from the left. I don't even know what it would be, but it's out to lunch right now. Why can't you condemn the violence from the left? Why can't you condemn all the Marxism? Why can't you go back into history and even into the present? And you have a problem with slavery, and of course on the right, yeah, we condemn slavery. That's wrong. Why can't you go and condemn all the wrongs of all the variations of Marxism? Why isn't that held to account? Why isn't there a massive effort to repudiate that, to dispel that, to get that out of academia and out of mainstream thought as terrible failed ideas, and of the very authoritarianism, of the very dystopianism that you fear or claim to be afraid of coming from the right? I think my last point would be to say is that what is happening with the federal government, and Trump's being called Hitler and a Nazi and these sorts of things, and we're living in a fascist America. The right is actually enforcing laws. Trump is actually enforcing laws. He's using executive orders just as Obama and Biden did before him, and Bush even before them. Presidents use executive orders to do things, and it's questionable. And on the right we had problems with it when the left was doing it. I think people on the right do have problems with our side doing it too, but also there's this game of power going on and of the desire to win the cultural battle. And so there's certainly the understanding that, well, if the left wants to destroy and radically transform America, then use the power that we have in the presidency and in Congress to change things, and change it to the better, and change it to our vision of America versus their vision and your vision of America. Because it would seem, this is what I think a lot of conservatives feel, is that the Republicans are basically controlled opposition, and when they have power, they don't really do very much with it, and that things just gradually kind of move more restrictive and more to the left, that the left tends to get their way. They harp on things longer and more persistently and tend to move things along, and then the Republicans reach across the aisle and don't do very much when they're in power, and come to stalemates and things like that. And that's how we see things from the right, from looking at Republicans. And so we're not very happy. So actually it's nice to see when Republicans, and nice to see someone like Trump stand up and actually be doing something, and actually trying to move things and move the culture back to the right, and move the laws and structures back to the right. So that's what makes him so popular, and that's what the left, and if you're on the left, that seems to be what makes liberals so unhinged and all of a sudden call fascism. Because honestly, it was, at least in the Second Amendment in the gun community, people on the right have been calling liberals, the Democratic Party, Nazis for a long time, because you want to come after the guns, you want to get rid of our constitutional rights. And we could see that, and we could see through the BS rhetoric, and we could see the exploitation of crises, of shootings and stuff as the basis to push those policies that are, again, rooted in the Marxist beliefs. Because it's really, you can't have defund the police and disarm the people and armed Antifa and take away all the people's guns. Now you got all these contradictions. You don't want ICE going after illegal aliens, but you do want the feds to go and raid houses across America of conservative gun owners to make them coercively give up their guns or die protecting that right. So a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of hypocrisy, and I just love calling it out, which is why I have to have this channel, because it's a little therapeutic to put my voice out there and call out the hypocrisy, even if I'm just one little voice in the wind. I'll be that, and it feels good. If you like this kind of content and my totally washed out screen, it's very sunny out today, then please like and subscribe. What do you think about this stuff? Please leave a comment below, a comment, a criticism. Please debate. Thank you for stopping by, and I will see you next time.